Thank you very much for inviting me again. I think this is the third time that I have this chiyah to come here to speak for CHAZAQ. You know, when somebody keeps inviting you again and again, so there's different ways of looking at it. Somebody once told me, the reason we keep inviting you again and again is not because you're good, it's just as we're going to keep pulling you here until you get it straight. So, definitely feel that it is a schus on my part that you're allowing me to be able to get here and talk to you. The topic tonight is all you would want to know about marriage and dating. I have to correct that because I don't know if I could tell you all you want to know about marriage and dating. I could only tell you all I know about marriage and dating. Not sure if that's all you're going to want to know. But part of marriage and dating is collecting the information and the feelings of various individuals, and then we kind of have to blend it all together. You know, where I come from, in my neck of woods, this may sound a little strange to you, but we actually don't go on dates. The parents do most of the legwork, and the boy and the girl meet as basically a formality once or twice in the house. And this is called in Yiddish, for whatever reason, I don't know what the root of the word is, but it's called a basho. I come still from turned more right. I met my wife 4 or 5 times. That was considered like a, what are you doing? Make up your mind. Come on, after 5 minutes, don't you know already? That was in her house. My kids, I have 7 married children. I have no clue how I married them off and how I paid for it. Don't know. You know, they say that story about the Yid who won the Powerball, $40 billion. They said, what are you going to do with the money? He said, I made 6 weddings. I have to pay tuition for all my children and the schar limud and everything else. And, you know, the tzedakah that I have to give and kosher meat. So I piled up over the years. I'm gonna pay all these people. They said, what are you going to do? What about the rest? They said. He said, the rest are going to have to wait till I win again. What should I do? You know, I can only do what I can. So, my kids basically met their prospective spouses once or twice. One of them 3 times, because she wasn't sure. I'm not going to get into the both malot and chasronot, the advantages and disadvantages of doing it either way. I can tell you one way or another that the bottom line is one needs a lot of tefillah and siyata d'shmaya and heavenly help to find the right shidduch, and that you yourself should be the right shidduch for your spouse. And it really doesn't make a difference how you go about meeting that spouse. But I will tell you a story, which I hope is not true, about a boy, you know, a Hasidic boy, never really spoke to a girl beforehand besides yelling at his sister. And here for the first time he's going to meet a girl in her house. And you have to realize that at that point the parents already discussed the basic all round and around, and this is going to be the 1, 2, 3 punch, you know, it's in or not. So the boy goes to like a coach. Try to imagine this. And the coach kind of tells him what to expect and what he should say to a girl and how he acts. So you know that they say there was a boy once that he sat down, he never spoke to a girl before. From time to time, he took out what seemed to be the eye of a fish and he popped it in the air. Afterwards, the girl's father said, what is this, a madman? What did he do? So the Schachter, he calls up the boy, are you crazy? What did you do? So he says that he met his coach. He said, I don't know, do I look at the girl? Do I not look at the girl? So he told him, you don't stare at her. From time to time, you cast an eye, he said. So he took it literally, you know. Anyway, the custom is that the boy meets the girl in the house, and that the father of the girl, you know, first the parents sit together, and the boy sits down and there's some food on the table. And the custom is that the boy should not eat from the food. There's a variety of reasons. for that. First and foremost, once he starts eating, everyone starts analyzing, how did he make the bracha? Are there crumbs on his face or not? Is he eating? So why get into that? Why even get involved in that? So they say this story, this boy came, and he sits down, and he looks at the girl, and he looks at the house, and there's a plate of ragalach, these little cookies, and he makes them a zainas, and he starts eating one, another one, another one, another one, and he polishes off the entire plate. She thinks it's a little strange. Then he looks at her, and he says, is there any more? She goes into the kitchen, she says, and he wants more. Mother like shrugs. She brings out another plate, he polishes that one off too. Says, is there any more? They're so embarrassed. Then there was no more in the house. They ran down to a neighbor, they ran to a 24-hour bakery, came running back, put it down again, finishes off the third plate, he makes the nalamichi and he leaves. Anyway, I don't have to tell you that the Schachter, the matchmaker, got an earful that night. And he called the boy and he asked him the same question. I don't know if it was the same Schachter or not. He said to him, are you out of your mind? What did you do? He says to him, look, he says, I sat down, I took one look, and I saw this is not for me. I said, I want to get something out of it, I said. I went through this whole experience. I wanted at least to have some type of a thing. I think that in the course of looking for your zivug, looking for your date, or helping others look for your date, I want to tell you that if you think, boy, that must be a lot easier if your parents kind of make the decision for you and you just 1, 2, 3 and you meet and then suddenly there are bells ringing. But then when you get to be the parent and you have to make the decision for your kids, there's a lot of sleepless nights. So you really don't get away with this. It's just your generation, next generation, everyone has to go through a certain amount of ups and downs until they find, as they say in Yiddish, the Besher, to the one that is destined to them. I always say to boys that come to talk to me and they ask me, Rabbi, do you think I'm ready to start dating? And my first question to them is, tell me why you want to get married. Tell me why you want to get married. There was a story of a man who came in to buy an auction, a parakeet, a very rare parakeet. And he said, he bidded it, the auctioneer said, okay, 500. And he said 600. And somebody said 700. And he said 800. Somebody else said 900. And everybody else was out of the bidding, it was just between two. And this person, by his nature, he couldn't take the fact that somebody should outbid him. And he went all the way up till 2,500. And finally, he bought it. So he said to him, I lost myself. What did I do here? I went and I spent 2,500 on a parakeet. He said to the proprietor, he said, tell me, is this parakeet smart? He said, is the parakeet smart? Who do you think was bidding against you the whole time? Why do you want to get married? Are you bidding against yourself? Or do you have a vision of what life is all about? And I want to address an issue, which is how God created the world and affects all of us. Most people, or most boys and girls really, ask them why they want to get married, so they understand that they are growing up with a certain amount of desire and lust. And I always say to the kids in my class that, desire and temptation is not bad. It's one of the mistakes that people make. It's God gave us this desire, so we should want to get married and want to have children and want to create the next generation. The Gemara tells us that at one period, the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, the members of the Great Assembly, this was right toward the end of the destruction of the Second Temple, got together and they imprisoned the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination of idol worship, of Avodah Zarah. They said, no more idol worship. We see already there's no Beit HaMikdash, and they saw there was going to be tremendous nisyonot, tremendous tests throughout the generation. No more idol worship. The Yetzer Hara, the driving passion for idol worship, can no longer exist. They took the angel that was in charge of idol worship and they imprisoned it, whatever that means. And we see in the course of history that at one point that was the end. Up until about 2,000 years ago, the whole world was very into paganism. Everyone was serving idols. Suddenly it stopped. And there was some, in different ways, but some level of a belief in God that everyone ran to at one point. And we see that historically. So the Anshe Knesset, the members of the Great Assembly said, ooh, if we're so good at this, we hit one home run, let's try another. So they took the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, which drives a person to passion, to lust, to the opposite gender, and they imprisoned it as well. And then the Gemara tells us that they searched all over Jerusalem and they could not find even a single egg because the roosters lost interest in the chickens. And they realized at that point that the world cannot have a kiyum, that the world is not going to exist. And what the Gemara is really telling us, that it is a mistake for a person to say, oh, I am walking on the street and my eyes are craving to look at something, or there is a desire in my heart. That doesn't make you evil. That is a tool that God gave you. That is a gift that God gave to the world so that there is continuity to the world and a building of generations. Our avodah is to take it like you would take anything and to curb our desires and to focus it in the right way. Very often the Yetzer Hara tells us, you're so evil, you're so bad. Look at what's going on in your mind. Look at what you're thinking about. And he uses that as an excuse. So what is the point of me to learn Torah? What is the point of me to pray? Look at where my mind is. And the Jew says to himself, no, of course I have these desires. God created me with them. That's what makes me healthy. That's what makes me greater than an angel. Because an angel does not have this avodah, this nisayon, this test of curbing his desires. Now, one purpose of this is obviously that we should want to get married. And that is part of the mitzvah. When a person closes his eyes and says, God, thank you for my desires, thank you for my temptations, that is a sign that I am normal and healthy, and I have a certain degree of peace of mind. And I want to stress this, because I was talking to a bunch of boys that were really in the dumps. I mean, these kids all had done time, they were on drugs. Many of them had come from very, very frum Orthodox families, and they had gone basically into the dumps. And I said to one of them, why are you doing this? And they said to me they were angry at rabbis, angry at religion. They want to run away from God. So I said to one boy, but you can't run away from God. So he tells me, pardon me for being so explicit, that Friday night he gets on the F train and he goes down to Manhattan and he has his nightclubs, and he went on to explain where he goes, and he used whatever words he used to describe the fact that he's running away from God. So I said to him, I want to ask you a question. Suppose you got onto the train Friday night and you went to that nightclub and you're standing right outside, okay? And you're about to step in and the telephone rings. And you pick up the phone and it's your doctor. He says, remember that routine blood test you took 2 weeks ago because you wanted working papers, whatever the case may be? He says, yeah, don't bother me now. I'm very busy. So I have to tell you, we found something very suspicious on your blood test, God forbid. And this little 18 naive kid, he says, what's suspicious? I didn't do anything wrong. What do you mean suspicious? My blood didn't do anything wrong. He says, no. We have to retest this. You see, you may be very sick. And the doctor suggests what disease he may have. And he goes, but, you mean I have this disease? Oh, we don't know. We'll have to do some further testing. So come on in next week. So it's the holiday weekend. All right, come in 10 days. And we'll do some tests. And about 10 days later, you'll get the results possibly. So I figure, but doctor, am I sick or not? Well, I figure within 3 weeks we'll know. And he slams the phone down. And suddenly this kid starts shivering from top to bottom. He is so scared. He is so frightened out of his wits. The thought that he's not going to live forever never occurred to him. The thought that he may be internally sick, that there is some type of a disease that's going to rack his body and destroy his life and rob him of his youth and take away his future, suddenly overwhelms him. And he's perspiring and his heart is racing and his blood pressure is soaring through the air. and the door opens up, and the nightclub matron says, "Your turn, come on in." Tell me, you think you're going to enjoy that evening? So the boy said, "No." But it didn't happen. So I said, "So why didn't it happen?" It's because God made you healthy. So the reality is you can't really run away from God, because God holds the last straw. Okay? It's like in baseball, so we all know that a right-handed pitcher has the advantage over a left-handed batter. Right? It's the other way around. It's the even lefty. One is to the batter's advantage, one is to the pitcher's advantage. So, if you send up a right-handed pitcher, you can change the batter. And he changes the batter, but you can't change the pitcher. Right? The one who has the batter has the last straw. God always has the last straw. So I said to him, whether you like it or not, God is giving you the option. God gave you a desire and He gave you a taiva. What you do with that desire is your business. You can use it to build a family. You can use it to have nachat in this world and in the world to come. Or you can blow it. That's up to you. But you can't run away from God. And I think that this is something that it's very important. Our desires are not evil. Our desires are a gift from God. And like any other gift, you can misuse it, or you can use it for the right things. Now, they say that if you see a man pulling up, and he gets out, and he opens up the door, and his wife comes out of the car, and he closes the door, takes a gentle bow. So one of two things are new. Either it's a new wife or a new car. Right? Marriage has a tremendous glamour to it. But that glamour is quickly gone as life takes over. One of the brachot, one of the blessings that we say to the chatan and the kala is, Od yishama b'yarei Yehuda. We should hear in the cities of Judea, Kol sason v'kol simcha, kol chatan v'kol kala. We should hear through rejoicing through the streets of Jerusalem the voice of the chatan and the voice of the kala. What does this mean, the voice of the chatan and the voice of the kala? What does this mean? Does the chatan have a different voice? Maybe he has a different suit. Maybe he now has new bills. Maybe he has something else. Life changes after he gets married. What does it mean, a different voice? So there is a vart from the Belzerav. He says a pshat, even though he doesn't say it in these words, but let's try to explain it this way. Imagine the chatan kala the first morning after they get married. So I don't know how it is in Borough Park now. There's a new custom which goes back at least a year or two. They serve like a regal breakfast for the chatan and the kala. So imagine the chatan comes home from Shacharit, and he just wore his talit the first time, at least as the minig of custom of Ashkenazim is, the world is his, and he walks in, and the kala wakes up early in the morning, and she showers and puts on her makeup, and she's all dressed up for her husband who comes home from breakfast, and they each smile at each other so long until their cheeks hurt, and he says, good morning, how are you, how's everything, what's doing, or what happened in synagogue, what happened in shul, and they sit down to breakfast, excuse me, each one 10 times, excuse me, and then she goes, okay, let's wash, with the salt, I forgot, I'm sorry, don't worry, don't worry, excuse me, goodbye, everything, one of them sneezes, they both rush for a tissue, and they're like sitting in a little strained relationship, because, they don't really know each other, and finally, the Suda breakfast is over, and they each bring a bencher for each other, and they run, and the boy gets up, and the chatan starts picking up the garbage, and she says to him, no, don't touch the garbage. He says, what's wrong? He says, no, my husband will never take out the garbage. You are king in my home. You go and you sit and learn Torah. I will take care of everything. He goes, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't. Then let's revisit the house a year later. Okay, she's standing there with a screaming baby. She has to get to work. He comes running in from Schachter. She says, where were you standing and waiting for? He said, nothing. I was talking to someone. You're talking to someone. I have to go to work. You're talking to someone. I have to punch in the clock. You don't have to punch in the clock and go down. I'm sorry, okay? Back and forth. This is going on and on. He opens up the breakfast. He says, where's breakfast? Where's breakfast? What do you think? I'm your maid. Make your own breakfast. You see the tuna fish. You see the mayonnaise. Go ahead and do it. And finally she grabs the baby. He grabs the baby. He's running out and she yells from the window, tell me, are you blind? You tripped over the garbage. You didn't see it? So you see, we pray that in the streets of Jerusalem, you should only hear the kol chatan and the kol kala. That the voice of the chatan and the voice of the kala, that it doesn't change. So how does that happen, that it doesn't change? So let me tell you, I know I may have shared some of these stories before you, but just to get right into it, I hope I don't bore anybody. But Baruch Hashem, me and my wife, we were blessed with 14 children. People ask, how, what, when? And some people say, don't say it, because it's an ayin hara. So I say it. You know why I say it? Because I say it because people ask me, how do you do it? And I said, I have no clue. How do you pay at the end of the month? I don't know. But I don't know, God did it. And I am one child. I was a ben yachid. Many of you have heard the story, I've said it before many times. That there was a woman that went to a doctor, and she said that the doctor, she was married for 12 years. And after she went through an exhaustive round of tests, the doctor said to her, listen to me, lady, I don't mean to hurt you, but I want you to be realistic. When hair will grow in the palm of my hand, you will have a child. And this woman was so distraught, she got onto the Madison Avenue bus, and she said she's never going to get off. She went back and forth and back, and finally the bus driver said, lady, the bus is going into the garage. She says, I don't want to get off. The driver goes, lady, I had a long day, okay? Whatever your problem is, I promise you, it won't get any better in the bus garage. She said, this bus driver is right. She said, Rabbana Shalom, if this is the life you want me to live, then I accept it. And she got off the bus. And a year later, she had a child. And I know that this story is true because this woman was my mother. I am a ben yachid, only child. Sometimes I would like to go back to... So I'd like to say the story because to show the chesed of Hashem Yisbarach, we don't know. We don't know how life works. And sometimes you have to be broken, and sometimes you have to be beaten, and sometimes you have to be hurt, to the point of, Rabbana Shalom, help me. There are times in our life where we're beaten down to the ground where we have to make a choice. Either we give up or we say, okay, God, if this is what you want, then I accept it. And sometimes when you say, if this is what you want, I accept it, there are pitachim, there are doors of Yeshua and bracha that open up that under normal circumstances were never available to you. Now, so one of the things, I have a car. My 98 Astro serves me very, very well. Gets me from one place to the other. People were talking about four-wheel drive and two-wheel drive and front-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive in the last storm. I didn't take my car out because I said, I have one-wheel drive. It's only one tire that turned. This is my story with my car. But I kind of use it as a way. I get into the car and I start driving and I say, Rabbana Shalom, do me a favor. Okay? I have this car. Why? Because, I have paying off all these weddings and supporting these children and so on. I said, I don't mind. I have no problem with this. Just get me from place to place. And if I get stuck anywhere, at least give me a good story to say. That's usually my tefillah before I go. So I pull into my mechanic. I tell him, it was leaking. I said, I think my car needs a new radiator. He looks at me. He says, I think your radiator needs a new car. It's the other way around. Now, I want to tell you that last year, a couple of minutes before Shabbat, in the middle of winter, someone knocks on my door, next door neighbor, and says that her baby has to go to the hospital. Her husband wasn't home. I said, Kol Hatzalah. She says, no, it's not such an emergency, but the baby has high fever. Doctor wants the emergency room to check out the baby. Can you drive me to the hospital? So a few minutes before Shabbat, I jump into my dependable car, and I take her to the hospital. And I leave her off, and as I start driving away, my wife calls, asks what happened. And with her bina yetera that a woman has, she says to me, you just dropped her off in the emergency room? I said, well, what else are we supposed to do? She said, her husband is not home. Go in and see if she needs any help. Okay, so I began, it's about a minute before candle lighting, and I begin circling, and a great miracle happens. I found a parking space in Borough Park. And I walk about 5 blocks back to the hospital. I go inside, and everything seems to be all right. The woman, she's okay. And now I have to walk home because it's already Shabbat. So it's a good 35-minute walk home. And let me tell you what my schedule was that Motzei Shabbat. I had to be 8 o'clock in Beit Yaakov. There was a 9th grade high school girls convention. At 10 o'clock, I had to be deep into Flatbush by a Malava Malka of a shul. And at 1 o'clock, 1 a.m., there was a kumzitz for some boys that were in trouble or boys that were struggling way out in someplace in King's Plaza. And it comes Matzah Shabbat, and everyone warned me not to be late. It comes Matzah Shabbat, I go outside, and I'm looking to the right, and I'm looking to the left, no car. It's not the first time I didn't remember where I parked my car. I figured, who would want to steal it? And then it occurs to me, it's not here. I said, oh no. So I start running, and I jump onto the city bus, the first city bus I took in, I think, 20 years. And also, thanks to my wife, she always insisted I keep a Metro card in my pocket, because you never know. So I attempted to put it in. I never knew there are so many ways to put in a Metro card wrong. I says, this way, the other way, that way, this way. I said, you do it. So he puts it in. I don't have a red cent to my name. And he takes it out. He says, it expired. I said, this is a good time to start schmoozing with the driver, I thought. So freezing. I said, what's it like driving all these days? And how do the boys behave in the morning? And we're talking. Finally, we're getting close to my stop. He says to me, no, you didn't pay. I said, you're right. I better get off. I get off. I run to my car. And it's late. I have 5 minutes to get to where I am. I jump into the car. And I turn the key. And the only thing that comes alive is that little red light that says that your seatbelts are off. Which I knew. The car's not starting. So this is great. It's freezing outside. So I jump out and I apply all my knowledge in auto mechanics. One is I opened up the hood and I looked inside. That did not help. The other is I kicked the tire. That also seemed not to work. I said, I'm in trouble. I said, I start running and I'm trying to hitch. Trying very, very hard to hitch. And the car's just whizzing by. I said, I can't believe this. It's freezing. They see how desperate I am. And I was very aggressively hitching, like standing in front of the road and waving. He says, I can't believe this. I can't believe people. Finally, someone stops me and I tell him my predicament. He says, no problem, I'll drive you. And as we're driving, there's a guy standing with his son trying to hitch. And I see he's slowing down to pick them up. And of course, I don't say it, but I think in my mind, don't slow down to pick them up, I'm late. So I said, well, there you go. A minute ago, I'm outside and I'm saying I'm angry at the whole world for not stopping for me. But once I'm inside, right, why stop for him? So anyway, now that I had a story to say, so I made it from one stop to the other. And I'm with these kids at night, okay? We're late at night, and I tell them the story. And I tell them that, you see, you are who your friends are. You are who you associate with. You are who you want to become part of. And I tell them the story how, here I can't believe people aren't stopping, and then I don't want to stop, but I'm on the inside. Anyway, I finish. Now I have to worry about getting home. And I come outside, and there's my car. It's parked in front of I said, how did it get here? So the boys told me that you inspired us. We have to think about each other. And we got it. I said, but it didn't start. They said they jump-started it. I said, but you don't have the key. They looked at me like, we don't need a key. Come on. So I said to them, you see, here you are, you're getting together with your friends just for a few moments. And we're thinking about, someone has to think a little bit more about his life, what he wants to accomplish with his life. And already I don't know how to really express it. I said, you're already using your talents for the right things, right? I got to tell you, as I was driving back, there was a guy hitching. I said, I can't be a hypocrite. I stopped and I picked him up. It's a big guy. And he's sitting there and I was telling him, it says that one of the ways really to fulfill the mitzvah of hachnasat orchim is nowadays, basically most people have where to sleep at night, is give them a ride with your car, stop with them. He says yes. Finally he gets out and as he's trying to open the door, the handle comes off. I told him, don't worry, it happens a lot of times. I get out to open up the door from the other side and the handle comes off again. I told him that apparently he has no other choice. He's going to have to push himself through the steering wheel side. And I tell you, he was like a bigger guy, and he got kind of stuck behind the steering wheel. He was kind of wedged in. I said, great, the fire department's going to have to cut my car open. This is what I need. So I yank him out, and he tells me that with your car, not only do you fulfill achnasat orchim, you also fulfill the mitzvah of pidyan shvuyim, which is redemption of prisoners. He says, you have both mitzvot. Okay? You have everything. So, with that in mind, that sets the stage for what I would like to tell you. You're wondering what all this has to do with dating and marriage. This is not supposed to be a shiur in auto mechanics, right? So this is Friday afternoon. My son is getting married on the offer of the Shabbat Chatan is on Shabbat. It's Friday afternoon and things are hectic. There's 10 trillion things to do. And I'm driving down the street and I put my foot down and there's no gas pedal. I look around. I find the gas pedal on the other side of the car. I call up my mechanic. I said to him, Herman, I lost my gas pedal. He says to me, Rabbi Schachter, why this only happened to you? I said to him, you're not my philosopher, you're my mechanic. Tell me what to do. He says, bring it over to the shop. I tell him, Chacham, how am I supposed to come over to the shop if I have no gas pedal? So he tells me, put the car in drive. Put the car in drive, and you see, it'll move a little bit. So I put the car in drive, and it moves. You know how fast it moves? About 3 miles an hour. Did you ever try driving in Borough Park 3 miles an hour Friday afternoon? Not a very pleasant thing. Long line of cars, this is without snow. Long line of cars beeping, yelling. So I had, he's a little bit outside of Borough Park, so I'm driving in not the most desirable sections. And every once in a while the cars are whizzing by me. I can tell you I learned a lot of new words then, which I never knew before. And I'm up to the block where my mechanic is, and I see that there is a speed bump over there. And my car starts going up the speed bump, and it rolls back down. I said, oh no, what do I do now? And I'm like trying to go to the right, to the left. I said, Rabbana Shalom, oh, you wrote the script here, come on, please. So finally, I realized I pulled over to the side of the speed bump. The incline wasn't that much, and I continued. Now, my mechanic, he's on the south side of Borough Park, where if you know what Borough Park is, that there is one point by 9th, 10th Avenue, where there's a huge hill up. Okay, I never knew exactly where that hill starts. I'm not so much into geology. Geology? Geography. No, whatever. Anyway, I learned in yeshivas, topography, okay. Anyway, geology. Geology, okay, right. Anyway, so I got to this point where the mountain starts going up. I'll tell you where the mountain starts going up. It starts going up smack in the middle of the busiest intersection, okay? Because as the buses are coming from all different directions, tanker trucks, garbage trucks, everything Friday afternoon, my car in the middle, that's it. The mountain is up, and there's no way it's not going up. And there's nothing I can do. People are beeping and yelling and screaming. So I dropped the window, and I'm like holding the gas pedal out of the window, let the people see, what the problem is. So finally, this truck pulls up right behind me, and out jumps this Chassidish guy. He's a truck driver, and he's payot, and he's wearing a sweatshirt. Comes over to me, he goes, "What's with you? Can't press your gas pedal?" So I give him the gas pedal. So you press it, okay? So he looks at me, and he says he gets the idea of what the score is. And he yells, I'll never forget this, he yells at all the people who are standing behind. And he says to them, "Stop beeping, get out and push the guy." So a bunch of people get out, and they started pushing me to my mechanic. Meanwhile, my mechanic, he wants to close, he's on his cell phone, he sees me coming, he says, "I see you driving very good, what's your problem?" We pull into the shop, he sees 10 people pushing from behind. So finally he tells me that a cable snapped, and he tells me it costs $200 to fix. And he sees there's like a tear in my eye. And he says to me, "Come on, $200, don't make yourself such a rachmanot." I said, "That's not the $200. I said, "Something just occurred to me." I said, "It says when a neshama goes up to Shemayim after 120 years. So they ask the neshama different questions. I just realized there's one question they're going to ask the neshama when he comes up, the soul. What kind of a person were you? There's two kinds of people in this world. The kinds of people when things go a little bit slow in front of you, you beep, get out of my way. And there are those that get out and push. I think that the first question that defines somebody is what kind of person are you? Are you a pusher or are you a beeper? And I think that in the course of dating and in the course of marriage, this is the most important question. Answer this question. And you don't have to answer anything else. Never mind how much money he has. Never mind how much money she has. Never mind what he looks like. Never mind what she looks like. But in the course of life, there's one question. Is he or she the kind of person, in your best estimate, that when you get stuck, are they going to holler and yell and beep, or are they going to push you? Because that's the key to life. That's where it's going to go one way or another. So how do I know that? So I go on a date and I say, "Tell me something. You're the type that beeps or pushes?" It's a funny kind of a question, right? May not exactly come across. The person may not take it right. The one answer is, talk about yourself. Talk about yourself in this position and explain how somebody was in your way and you got out and you pushed instead of screaming. It doesn't have to be with a car. It can be in 10 trillion other ways. And see how the other person reacts. Because most of the time when you define yourself, you know who the other person is. They say this story that there was a teacher, Rabbi, whatever you want. He calls up the father and he says to the father, says, "Your kid is totally out of control. He can't sit for 1 second. I want you to take him to a doctor and have him medicated. Now he can't come back to school." He says, "He's driving me nuts. He's turning the whole class around. I come home, I can't even get to myself." Anyway, the father talks to the principal. "What should I do?" Anyway, he takes the kid to a doctor. The doctor says, "He doesn't see it that much, but look, we can put him on something light. And, try to some type of Ritalin or something, and we'll see if he reacts better." So they put him on something, so the father has a concern, he calls the teacher, he says to the teacher that my kid is going to take this, he's going to be very embarrassed. People are going to say he's on medication. So the teacher has an idea. He says, you know what? I'll send the kid out every single day for a coffee. Okay? When he comes back, as a reward for bringing me the coffee, I'll give him a candy. It will sugarcoat the tablet, so nobody will realize what this is. So after 3 weeks, the teacher calls up, he says, it's a different classroom. It's a different classroom. It's so beautiful, it's so wonderful. I enjoy the day. So when I come home, I have menuchat hanefesh, I have peace of mind. I guess the teacher was right. So finally the father has a talk to the kid, and he says to the kid, he says, I want to ask you something. He says, are you taking this medication? Are you going out for a coffee every day? He says, yeah, I bring my rabbi a coffee. He says, does it bothers you? You're going out for a coffee? He says, no, I don't mind the break. And is your teacher giving you a candy? Yeah, I don't need the candy. You don't need the candy. What do you do with it? He says, I throw it into the coffee, he says. Okay? Very often, the way we judge someone else is to kind of define ourselves. And it's very often in the dating process, instead of trying to search or figure out who the other person is, very clearly define who you are. And if that person is not interested in you because of what you said, then you know you're not interested in him or her or vice versa. Because that's what this world is all about. Pushing or beeping. I got to tell you, I was once by a seminar, an entire Shabbat. Speeches Friday night, speeches Shabbat afternoon, Matzoi Shabbat. Matzoi Shabbat, a man comes over to me, he says, my wife is not feeling well in her room. Shabbat Refuah Shalema. Do you mind going into the room and repeating all your speeches? Pushing it a little bit. And I felt like saying, if your wife is not feeling well, so why'd you come? I should go and... So I was going to walk away, and I reminded myself about this pushing or hunking business. And I said, let me check this out. I said, all right, I'll go in. And we go in, and his wife surely wasn't feeling well. She was suffering from a very debilitating disease. She was totally paralyzed. She was on a respirator. She was lying completely flat on her back. The only thing she could move is her eyes. And apparently, the husband had left no stone unturned to bring her to this Shabbat. There was a whole crew of a tzolot, an ambulance with respirators, with respirator technicians that came along for Shabbat, maybe 20, 30 people. And they made a mistake. They realized that she has to have a special bed. It didn't fit through the doorway of the room. So the technicians were there. They dismantled the bed and reassembled it inside the room. But they said they can only do it once. So she was confined to the room the entire Shabbat. So basically, whoever spoke, whoever sang, whoever entertained, came in just for a few moments to her. And so I sat down to her bedside and we spoke a few moments. And as I walked away, he followed me and he thanked me, and there was a tear in his eye. And he said, maybe my wife can't respond, but I could see in her eyes that she was smiling. And there was a tear in his eye. And he was so thankful that he was able to get his wife to smile. There is ahava that is real. There is love that is real. There is love that is fake. There are people that scream, and there are people that push. And that's really what it's all about. If anyone believes the Mesilat Yesharim says that this world is for this world, and there's no world afterwards, never mind his level of emunah and faith, but he has to be totally out of his mind. So let me tell you that shidduchim are min hashemayim. We know that. I got to tell you a cute story. That I had a friend, his daughter he was looking into a shidduch for his daughter. And of course I'm making up the names. But one boy, his name, let's say, was Rosenberg. The other boy, his name was Klein. And he went to learn at night with his chavruta, with his learning partner. And the learning partner said to my friend, he said, I know that your daughter, you're thinking about two boys, Klein and Rosenberg. He says, yeah, how do you know? He says, Mr. Klein called me. He says, I got to tell you, I don't want to butt in, but he was strange as Mr. Klein. He was asking me the weirdest questions about you, because he wanted information about you. I said, what was he asking? He was asking whether you use regular dishes or plastic dishes. He was asking how often your wife vacuums the house. I don't know. I would stay away from this Klein guy. He says, really? So the guy says, okay, they better do the shidduch with Rosenberg. And that's what happened. He looked into the Rosenberg shidduch, and the shidduch came, and there was l'chaim, and everyone was there, and the chavruta comes, And he comes over, and Rosenberg comes over, the mechutan, the girl's father, boy's father, whatever it was, and he says, and I called your learning partner to ask information. You did? Yeah. He says, of course, I didn't give him my real name. I told him my name is Klein, You see sometimes as shidduchim come to fruition that it's in God's hand. They say that there was a boy in Eretz Yisrael, somebody stopped him, a man stopped him, got a hitch with this boy, talked to the boy, really liked him, decided to introduce him to his daughter. They met, and they're getting married. By the engagement party, the father of the girl gets up and says, you know why I took him? He says, we drove from Bnei Brak to Yerushalayim, and not once did he beep his horn. Can you imagine? In Eretz Yisrael, whereas they don't drive too fast, they fly too low. Not once to beep his horn, so the kid turns all red. The Chatan, he says, I got to tell you the truth. He says, what? He says, my horn is broken. But if a shidduch is supposed to be a shidduch, it is going to happen. So the truth is, we can't always protect ourselves, but we have to do everything within our power. I want to read to you a Gemara in Masechtes Menachot. The Gemara tells us as follows. There was a story by one person who was very careful with the mitzvah of tzitziz and shema. However, he had a temptation, driving lust and a temptation. And Shama sheyesh zona achat bekarkei haya. He heard about an irlat or a prostitute in a very distant place. Shenotelet, who takes taf zehuvim, 400 gold coins as her service fee. So he sent her the 400 gold coins. And the time was made that they would meet. And when the time came, he went and he entered. And her maiden came in and told her, the man that sent you the 400 gold coins is here. She said, let him come in. And the spread over there was, the Gemara tells us, Sheva mitot, shesh shel kesev. There were 7 beds, 6 were of silver, 1 was of gold. The Gemara describes the entire setting. And she sat all the way on top. And as he went up toward her, his tzitzit hit him in his face by accident. Some say it was a nes. And he turned around and he went back down. He's leaving. And she followed him. And she said, I swear to you, I will not let you leave until you tell me, Ma mum ra'iti bi. What did you see in me? What blemish did you see in me? And he said to her, Avodah, I swear to you, Shelo ra'iti isha yafeh kamotech. I have never seen a more beautiful woman than you. El mitzvah achas, there is one commandment, tziva lekeinu v'tzitzit shema. And it's called tzitzit. And it says, Ani Hashem Elokechem. And it says, Ani Hashem Elokechem twice. God punishes those who violate His mitzvot, and God gives reward to those that fulfill it. And these tzitzit appear to me as if they were 2 sets of witnesses that are going to testify against me. She still did not allow him to leave. She said, what is your name? What is the name of your city? What is the name of your rabbi? What is the name of your Beit Midrash? She had never believed that any human being can have such willpower and such a power to turn around. So he told her and he left. And she went and she sold all her assets. She was very rich. She divided, 1/3 went for taxes, 1/3 went for the poor, 1/3 she took with her. And she arrived by the Bet Midrash of Reb Chia, and she asked for this boy. And Reb Chia told her, Biti, my daughter, Shema inecha nasata bi'echad min hatalmidim, perhaps you want one of my disciples. You should know that's not the way we do things. And she took out the paper and she told him the entire story. In that case, she said, you are zocheh to him, and eventually she married him. And the Gemara says that those very spreads that could have lost him his olam haba forever became the bed of heter. So he had both his matan scharo ba'olam hazeh uli olam haba eino yodea kama. We can't even fathom that. Now here is what the commentaries explain about this Gemara. In the course of a person's life, we will have a certain amount of simcha. You will have a certain amount of pleasure. In the course of our lives, before we are born, it is determined we will have a certain amount of pain, a certain amount of agmat nefesh. Now, the rest is up to our bechira, up to our free choice. Our free choice, however, will not earn us any more satisfaction. In other words, if I elect to listen to my evil inclination and engage in an act of isur, in an act that is prohibited, what I am doing is, I may enjoy it, but what I am doing is, I am consuming the amount of pleasure that would have come my way regardless. And the ultimate frustration in the world of truth is, what? I'm being punished for this pleasure? When somebody else got the same pleasure, and for him it was a mitzvah, and he's being rewarded for it? And the same is true when a person is faced with a test, and it takes tremendous courage for him to take his tzitzit in his hands and say, I must walk away from this. These are witnesses. And he walks away and he feels depressed, and he feels deprived, and he is in pain. You are not in that is deducted from the amount of pain that was destined to you anyway. No one suffers any more for fulfilling a mitzvah, and no one gains any more for engaging in an aveirah. The range of bechira is only to decide whether you're willing to subject yourself to God's timetable, and as a result, you will have the reward for mitzvah. This person at the end gets both worlds. He would not lose to what he turned around. And that is really the message to us. You know, it says, 40 yom kodem yitzirat havlad, machrizin bas plani leplani. 40 days before someone is created, they announce the Shemayim that so-and-so is destined for so-and-so. So how is it that there are marriages that don't work out? How is it that there are marriages, tragically, that wind up in divorce? And the answer is, says the Arizal, that the Gemara tells us that there is a ikr zivug and there are secondary zivugim. In other words, there is the main zivug that a person has. Not everyone is zochet to that zivug. There are distortions in the course of life which sometimes have to do with the previous gilgul. As a matter of fact, the Chidah says that sometimes a couple gets married and Shana Rishona, the first year is somewhat rocky, not going so good. And after a while they settle down and the marriage is okay. He said sometimes subconsciously both of these neshamot were here in this world in a previous gilgul. And one of them had to come down to correct something that wasn't done right in the previous gilgul. And as a result, his mate had to come down also. And the mate subconsciously is very upset. Because of you, I have no menucha, I have to come down and deal with the ups and downs of this world. And therefore there's an inner resentment. But after a while it's solidified in the course of the marriage. There's a certain acceptance. So we really don't understand what this means. We know that there is tefillah, and we know that we have to try to do our best from our perspective to control our desires, to dress with tzniut, that a man controls his eyes, that he controls where he is, that he controls where he goes. And it's unbelievable, the ratzon, the inner ratzon that we really have. It's important that we don't listen to our evil inclination that says you blew it anyway. There is no such a thing. We start from tomorrow. God is always willing to accept us. That is the eschem al kanfei nesharim. In the course of coming into dating and marriages, on the one hand, we are to know it is God's will whether we are going to have a successful marriage or not. But on the other token, we have to do everything from our perspective to try to set our directives and establish what we want. There is nothing wrong with a boy looking for a girl that's attractive or a girl looking for a boy that is handsome. But that cannot be the only priority. And if a person uses that as the only basis of decision in marriage, it is unfortunately almost a guarantee that the marriage winds up in failure. Of course, if someone is repulsed by something, one does not enter into those circumstances. But just because someone doesn't hear bells ringing, that is not a reason that this person is not the zivug. Just the opposite. The bells ringing is a distraction. It's a distraction from the real question, is this person a pusher or is he a beeper? And I want to conclude with the following story. There was a man who was king. He was a Jewish person. He was a frum person. And he was king of Poland for one day. His name was Reb Shal Veil. How was he king of Poland for one day? Well, it turns out he was an advisor to the king. The king passed away, and his nephew Sigmund was the heir to the throne. He was next in line to take over the Malchut and to sit on the Kisei HaKavod, to sit on the kingly throne. But Sigmund was on a skiing expedition, and it would take him 2 days to get back. And according to the Polish constitution, the sun could not set on Poland without a king empowered in the throne. So of course all the ministers offered to be king for a day. But no one trusted each other because everyone was scared that once they sit on the throne, they're not going to give it up. So someone had the idea, let's have Rav Shaul, an Orthodox Jew. It would be inconceivable that he would be able to hold on to the throne. He would realize that he will sit on the throne for one night. And Rav Shaul, to the surprise of his friends and family, accepted the role of being king for one night. Nobody understood why. But that one night he enacted law after law after law, took away the taxes, the special Jew taxes, where Jews had to pay a special tax over all the other citizens, redeemed many people from the prisons who could not pay their rent, and so on, and did not stop. Sigmund came and he gave over his crown to Sigmund. And Sigmund was extremely indebted to the fact that he asked Rav Shaul and even his son Meir to stay as close advisors. Sigmund, realizing that one of the most important things is to guarantee continuity and to establish someone to be an heir to the throne, Sigmund had no sons. He had one very beautiful princess daughter. And he had a great idea. He said his daughter should marry Meir, Shaul's son, who has royal blood in his veins because his father was king for a day. And, Meir, of course, he's the next in line to be king of Poland. There's only one little slight triviality. He would have to renege on his Judaism. And, okay, so big deal, but for becoming king, why not? Rav Shaul got wind of what was happening and he realized that his son was in great danger. According to the Polish constitution, if a man had already been married, even for a short while, he could no longer be an heir to the throne or marry the princess. So Rav Shaul realized he has to marry off his son quickly. So he called up the Shadchan and he said, I need quick service. I need my son married within the hour. They said, that's a little absurd. He says, we have no choice. And somebody came up with an idea. There was a woman who was on her deathbed. She was 15 years older. She was dying. Rav Shaul went over to her. The Chevra Kadisha, the burial society, is already standing around, family weeping. He asked if she's still conscious. And he said to her, my dear daughter, you have an opportunity to fulfill one mitzvah before you leave this world. And that is to save the life of my son. As she understood what Rav Shaul was saying, her family said, get away from us, are you mad? This woman is dying. But she said, no, why not do one more mitzvah? And you have this ultimate tragedy, irony of ironies, the greatest zenith of contradictions in the world, a chuppah that was set up over a deathbed. And she took the ring, and Rav Shaul thanked her and promised to support her family. When the king showed up later, and Rav Shaul heard the suggestion, he said, only you would have told me a day ago, what a pity my son just got married. And he figured the problem was all but solved. Now Sigmund was angry, but he needed Rav Shaul Veil too much to cast him away, so he kept him as an advisor. A year down the road, there's a knock on the door of Rav Shaul Veil's estate, big, rich Jew, big estate. There's a woman standing there, she demands to come in. The guard says, you can't come in, there are hours. Who do you think you are? She says, you better let me in. Why? She says, I'm the daughter-in-law of Rav Shaul. He says, people have used all sorts of excuses to get in here. That's an original one. And he comes up to Rav Shaul, he says, there's this woman outside, she wants to come in. He said, well, she's desperate, so give her a couple of kopecks, whatever. No, she claims she's your daughter-in-law. He goes, I don't have time for this. Fine, send her in. She comes and she stands there, and he says, how can I help you? What do you mean? I'm your son's wife. Listen, you need some money. Saying, what's the? No, I'm your son's wife. You don't remember? Your son married me. He's like, but, how do you say so? You're supposed to be dead, but, it's not. Couldn't think of a nice way to say that. He said, you're not going to believe what happened. After I accepted the ring on my finger, I felt like a new gift of life. And it took many, many months. But suddenly everything was reversed and I got better. And to the amazement of the doctors, I'm healed. And I'm alive. And Rav Shaul says, wonderful. What do I do now? So he tells her, ma'am, between you and me, okay? I mean, you know good and well that why this shidduch was done. It was done to... he says, look, I don't want to hurt you, okay? But I kept my word. I was supporting your family. She says, yeah. Here, I'll give you another 10,000 ducats, okay? We're going to have a rabbinical court come in here. We're going to write a divorce, a get, right here, okay? She says, but I want to speak to my husband first. So he calls in Meir. He says, she wants to talk to you. I don't want to talk to her. Well, she's your wife. You'll have to talk to her. He goes in and she says, I want to ask you something. Why didn't you marry the princess? Because what do you mean? I'm a Jew. We've risked our lives to maintain our Judaism. What do you mean you're a Jew? I don't believe it. What do you mean you don't believe I'm a Jew? You probably are my wife, the way you're talking to me. Well, what do you mean you don't believe I'm a Jew? She says, what does it mean to be a Jew? What do you mean? I believe in God. You do? No, you don't. What do you mean I don't? If you really believed in God, then you would believe I'm your wife. Why? Because you married me. Yeah, but I only married you because... What do you mean because? If you really believed in God, if you really were a God-believing Jew, then you would understand that God arranged this shidduch, and even this chuppah, for whatever reason. What's the difference how it came to be? If it wasn't God's will, it wouldn't have come to be. And I want to tell you something else. I was almost dead. The last thing in the world I was interested in is getting married. And I did it to save your life. And God gave me my life, and now you're going to kill me? And he's like, oh boy. And she says to him, what's your problem? You need yichus, lineage? I am the niece of the great Ramah Shriselis, the great Rabbi of Krakow. You want money? I potentially have a lot of money. All I have to do is take a divorce, and I have 10,000 ducats. Comes to his father, he says, I think I'm staying married to her. Father was very upset. She was 15 years older than him. And they went to her uncle, the Ramah, the great Rabbi of Krakow, and they said, what do we do? And the Ramah said, how can I argue with her? And the father of Shaul began to cry. He said, he's my only son. I want to see generations. And the Ramah promised, if this is their understanding of marriage, then I promise you there will be kingly generations. And they redid the chuppah just to be sure that it was authentic. And the Ramah said that the family should take on the last name of Te'umim, which means twins. And they had a daughter, a year later, one daughter, that was born on Parshat Toldot, the week of twins, Yaakov and Esav. And this daughter married a great Talmid Chacham, a great tzaddik, the Mechaber of the Sefer Kakon, the Yonah. And she had, there's different versions to the story, but she had 12 sets of twins. And almost all of them grew, and she had one more daughter. I think 12 sets of twins, they were all male, and one daughter. Ko Sevarchu, 25. And almost one by one, they were all from the greatest Gedolim and Tzadikim in Klal Yisrael. The father-in-law of the Divrei Chaim, the Sanzerov, which is the heir, the forefather of the Babiv dynasty, Klosenberg dynasty, were all the greatest Geonim, with the Tu'umim generations. Now, we're not faced, all of us, with this kind of an Esayah. But we are faced with the test sometimes, whether we believe in God or not. And it's going to come at a time that we have to take a real good, deep look into our own hearts. Why did we come down to this world? To beep or to push? And if we decided that we came down to push, then God does a lot of pushing, of opening doors of bracha and atzlacha and achat for us. Thank you very much.